Louis XVI est mort il y a 3 jours. Il a été guillotiné sur la place de la Révolution à Paris.
Ma patrie est en danger.
1793. This is La Vendée, the Counter-Revolution in the West. This is a game by John Poniske, development by Russ Lockwood, game art and layout by Mark Mahaffey, and is part of the Against the Odds publication magazine. Can't remember if it's an annual, but it doesn't matter. This is a game about the insurrection in La Vendée, in the western part of France. If you see Brittany, La Bretagne on the northwest, you travel down the coast southwards and you will find where the river Loire goes to sea, and pretty much south of the Loire is where most of the insurrections happened. There were few in several different years. Here is focused on the 1793 one, which was the biggest one, the more dangerous to the new established government. Remember, this is 1793, is pretty much king gets beheaded, and we are still far away from Napoleon getting his hands on the consulate and all that. But if you want, and leave it in the comments, we might go through a small quick action report with some historical input, as I did with the Battle of Mountbatten. And if you want to see it, click the link up there. Okay, what the game has special. It's a grand operational, so you just move your insurrects, your irregular troops, and armies around. What are insurrect troops? Okay, I zoomed in a bit. These we see here are les chouans. It's armed citizens that want to fight for the cause of king and God. Not in that order, actually, God and king, as God is the ultimate king and the king is elected by God. So that's pretty much what the counter-revolutionaries defended. For the Republicans, we can go there. We have the National Guard, okay? They are considered as the irregulars of the Republic. They just handle and police the areas, and they are really the most, you could call it, this is like a proper civil war, because many of them were neighbors and even families. And you can see several French movies about that. Even the families were divided. Some were with the Republic, others would fight for the king and religion to the end. Okay, irregular troops move about, and then we have the armies, which are represented by a flag and a commander, and maybe they have one superior general. There's always one superior general for the entire area of operations in this, and it must be assigned to one army. There can be no armies without a commander, and overall commander of all the forces is usually assigned to an army. What he can do rules-wise is just reroll dice that are used during that turn. There are no Republican armies at the moment in the map. Each turn is a month, so from March to December. The Republican armies will start to appear in April from the north, and then from the east, etc. There's a possibility of foreign intervention if the insurrects manage to capture Granville. If they do that, the British will send a force there, commanded by York, which will disembark in La Vendée and help the insurrection. So how does the game play? Well, it's very simple. You move irregular forces, you move with armies, you obviously resolve the combat and advance the month. You can imagine what happens when an army marches through an area. You can imagine all the irregular forces doing all the atrocities that were done during La Vendée. As I said before, it came down to family feuds with brother fighting against brother. Civilian wars are always the most dirty of them all. The armies can only move by the usage of the cards. There is a specific phase in the sequence of play that we will use the cards, and that's the only way for the armies to move. The irregular forces are not constrained by that and can move. They have their own phase and they can move. Usually, or pretty much, irregular forces can only move one region. So they lack the discipline, they plunder along the way, they lose time doing horrendous things to local populations, burning the villages and whatnot. Armies being more concentrated and more disciplined because of a central command, not just being whatever you want to do, tend to only move when the cards come out, but they have the advantage of moving one or more areas according to what the card says. For example, and the cards are specific on that. For example, you could have the inspired leadership for that moment. So two armies may move, it's not mandatory, 3 regions and then may attack. 2 forces can occupy the same region. You don't have to resolve combat. Okay, the region can be controlled, can have both Republicans and Royalists in the same area. It comes down to the decision of the player, of one side or the other, to attack on his phase if he wants. There's always the possibility of retreat. So if you retreat, there's always losses, there's always stragglers. One option rule that I will be using is the desertions, which Royalists and Republicans have. I will play with the brûlé, which is pretty much when the army of Mayence and the Kléber, they advanced through a town, and you can see this in many 20th century wars and many other wars, but it could just erase the town, right? So the basis of support of the insurrection start to disappear. So it will affect more the willingness of insurrects to keep joining the insurrection, and without basis of support it gets destroyed. So in a sense, you have a lot of 20th century tactics that people like so much in war games, but in a history lesson, it already happened before exactly in the same way, just with different causes and using different names. All right, we're going to the table and Ooh, the little pointer. By the way, this is Warlord Games. Ooh, yeah. Very cheap and very useful. This one and the line of sight one. I want to make this a quick series. Not sure if I'm gonna show every detail, but see you in a bit. Going to have a drink and then we come back to the table.